in continuous integration pipeline, we saw about triggers, wherein the trigger could be whenever the commit has been done or scheduled, or when another build is succeeded. Similarly, even a release pipeline has a trigger which can be configured for each stage and each workflow. So let's look at the triggers for a stage and at artifact level. So starting with the artifact, now we have added an artifact, and this artifact or this pipeline is not completely automated. Right now we have to trigger them manually. So in order to enable continuous deployment, you have to select the option of continuous deployment trigger on the artifact, and then we have to enable the continuous deployment trigger. And similar to integration pipelines, you can add a filter for a particular branch. Only if the build is from a particular branch, then it would trigger the continuous deployment. So example here, right now I have enabled continuous integration deployment trigger, which means that whenever there is a new artifact, new version of the artifact, it would trigger a deployment. And similarly, you can enable a pull request trigger, which means that if the commit being done is because of a pull request, then this would get triggered automatically. So you can disable continuous deployment to, let's say, to ensure not all branches are deployed, but you can enable pull request, which means that only if the code is pushed to a pull request, code will be merged. So in most cases, pull requests are used for higher environment branches. So it would make sense to enable this if you're looking to deploy when the build is from a main branch. And let me disable this. Now this is the trigger for the artifacts when you want to trigger a release or when you want to trigger a deployment. Now what are the triggers for individual stages? Now I have a development stage, and then right now I have enabled after release, which basically indicates that whenever there's a new release, automatically start the deployment for the stage of development. And then if continuous deployment is enabled, which means that as soon as there is a new build, a new release is triggered, which will automatically start triggering a deployment into the development stage. Now, another option which we are using in the case of a QA is after stage, which means that this deployment is after a previous stage is been completed. So if you in this case, the previous stage to be completed is development. If I include staging, then whenever there is a new build, and if it's deployed to staging, after that it would also go into the QA. So, or you can have one or multiple trigger points in case of an after stage, and the last option is the manual, which where even if a new release is automatically triggered, it would not be deployed until manual deployment. Manually, you go ahead and deploy, click on deploy onto the stage. So in most cases, we use after release and after stage, the way we have mentioned here, and this is how you go ahead and trigger based on releases, based on uh, the trigger type. And other option you always have is the schedule, where you can schedule the deployments to this particular stage on a predefined sequence or date and time, and the deployment would happen as per the schedule.